All is well. All is well. Remember? Ranchor Das, Chachar. Every time you're facing a difficult situation, say all is well. Oh, well, it's an honor. It's an honor, it's a privilege to be here. And I'm nervous, at the same time, very happy to be here. And I know that this is a post-lunch session and everybody has had a good meal. And I myself used to find it difficult to stay awake at this time of the day. So I'll be very conscious, and I deeply appreciate and respect the fact that you're spending your time and you're going to be giving your attention to me. So I'll try to keep my presentation very brief, very short, very interactive. And one thing I want to promise is that I'll speak from my heart. It'll be a genuine attempt to share a few deep felt beliefs with you. This last 1 month has been a little rough on me on a personal front, with me having to run in between hospitals and taking care of lots of things, and I managed to even cut my finger. But this when you are going through difficult times, you tend to introspect. You tend to look within, and you start thinking about what gives you the inner strength, what really will help you to deal when you're facing a lot of tough situations. So I've been in that introspective mode, so pardon me if I sound a little gyani today to all of you. But like I said, it's going to be heartfelt. So we are talking about merchandising, and I've been doing, a lot of people probably already know me here because I've done some workshops with you guys, and so I'm not going to be giving the old gyan that I keep talking about, but I'll try to say something which I've learned over these past few months, or let's say past year, and I'll share some of the learnings and some of the deep things that I've started to believe in, which I think will make a big difference in the way we conduct ourselves and in the way we go about achieving the new excellence, so to speak, in our merchandising world. I just came across this slide. A friend of mine, she's a GM in Yebhi.com. So she shared this slide on Facebook. I thought it would be good fun to just share it with all of you. So 12 reasons why. By the way, I mean, this is representing of all of us sitting here. Everybody is I here. Anybody can relate to it? But I am like, wow, how did we land up? How did we land up to be like this? So anyways, just so what are the keys to the new excellence for the merchandising world, or for anybody for that matter? Now you must be wondering, I'm going to talk in some different language or something. But this is my way of keeping you involved. What do you think these words are? Give yourself a big hand. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's it. Good job. I mean, these are the 4 keys which you've sort of unlocked today for yourself, is what I believe will lead us into the new excellence, into the realm of new excellence, so to speak. Smart. Smart is now such a beaten word, everybody wants to use this word in some way or the other. Yeah. So I'm not going to be spending, too much time on this smart thing, because I believe each and every individual sitting in this room is smart, is very, very smart. So I'm going to just run over some of these concepts that I keep talking about, keep reiterating, keep harping on. And I would expect some of you guys to tell me, what do you think I'm going to talk about, or what do you think I want to say here? So first hint, so to speak, on my slide is 80-20. Anybody? Any guesses? How does that relate to being smart?
80% merchandiser, 20% production.
Anybody else?
Efficient versus
80% experience, 20% education.
efficiency versus hard work. Equally smart.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Anybody else? Work less, produce more. I love that. That's a brilliant one. So basically, this is one of the fundamental laws that if you imbibe, if you internalize, if you really understand the value of it, will definitely help us become smarter at what we do than how already we are. So this is based on a very old economist called Wilfredo Pareto. It's called the Pareto's principle, right? And it's around us everywhere. You see it in everything possible, right? So 80% of a company's turnover comes from 20% of the customers, right? Or let's say, in stock market, if you invest, 80% of your returns come from 20% of your, investments or 20% of your stocks. Or you look at it in nature, 80% of the crop is yielded from 20% of the seeds, right? Likewise, 80% of your headaches come from 20% of the sources, right? So this is a very key thing to understand, observe, and acknowledge, and then apply it in your own life, right? So for the merchandising community, if I say that if you're making 10 things on your to-do list, out of that, there are 2 which are worth the rest of the 8 in terms of value that they will give, right? Next is eat that frog. What do you think I'm talking about here? There's a saying which goes that if you have 3 frogs to eat, it won't help to stare at them for too long. And it is good if you eat the ugliest one first, because then the rest will be easy, right? So eat that frog, basically what the tendency of every human being to stay in their comfort zone, right? So we want to avoid the tough. Whenever I know I've got to do the costing job, it's going to take a lot of my time and effort and concentration, and a lot of my intellectual horsepower will be used. What do? I'll do it. पहले ये swatches बना लेती हूँ, right? Let me just fix the file. Let me just do this. And what do? We tend to put away the ugliest frog that is staring at us, and we keep staring at it. And suddenly, 12 बज गया यार, lunch time हो गया, अभी तो costing भेजनी थी. Right? So that's what I'm trying to say here. Eat the ugliest frog first, and you'll be smart. The biggest frog, if you niglau, then the rest is easy. And there's another law which applies in becoming smart. I'm sure I've talked about it enough, which is called the Parkinson's law. How many of you are aware of Parkinson's law? It's also called the student syndrome. Anybody can tell me? Some of my students should say, yeah, I've talked about it in the past. Anybody? That work expands to fill the time allotted to it. This is so true of the production guys. You give them 60 days, they will take all of the 60 days. And you tell them, I want this done in 25 days. Sure enough, it's done in 25 days. So what happens then is that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. You will give yourself, I have, अभी तो टेकपैक आया है, देख लेंगे, delivery तो अभी 2 महीने दूर है. So you will suddenly start filling the time you have allotted yourself. You got these 60 days, so why pay attention to the tech pack right now? What's the urgency? You will look at it, right? And suddenly you don't realize that all the time went. Suddenly the lab dips took too much time and you are sitting very close, the delivery 15 days are left and your lab dip is not approved. Work expanded to fill the time allotted to it. Happens. And this is also called the cramming syndrome where students will sit, do chutti, masti, aaram se, और exam के एक दिन पहले सब papers निकाल के शुरू. Right? You start cramming right on the 11th hour. It's a very natural tendency, so don't feel bad. All of us go through it. Right? But the key to excellence and key to moving to the new realm of excellence is knowing that, being conscious, being aware that these things are happening to us. And they are natural. They happen to the best of us. It happens to me. I've been trying to write a book, on merchandising for so long. It's taken me a long time to finish it. Probably because of all these things applying on me per se. So I'm equally guilty, right? But the best part about knowing these things that you get off the track, and if you are aware, if you are conscious, then you get back on the track quickly. Elimination. Elimination, how do we start? Elimination relates to a lot of, Sigma talk that keeps happening today, Lean and Sigma. Eliminate the waste. So for a merchandising community, what does elimination mean? Well, that phone is ringing. You don't have to pick it there and then. You have 200 emails in your inbox waiting for you. You don't have to keep checking them every now and then. Right? You don't have to say yes to every request that comes your way. You've got to eliminate. You've got to eliminate what is unimportant so that you are then free to do what is important. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? And Americans, I've seen, they do a very good job of eliminating stuff because, they just, you call any American at, 5 in the evening, what do you see? Are they ever available? What do you hear? An answering machine, right? But no, we are eager to answer every call, right? Somehow email actually gives you a sense of, psychological sense that you're needed. You're important. You have 5,000 emails. People need you. And I've experienced it myself because when I quit my job, there was one day when I had these 1,000 emails waiting for me, asking me to do something, take some action. And after quitting my job, nobody wanted to write any emails to me. I was like, shit, I'm not needed anymore. It was a psychological hit. I'm a nobody. Nobody wants me. So emails give us a satisfaction at a certain level that we are needed. Right? So we feel good. Again, naya email. There's somebody needing me again. Let's read it. What's it? And then there is a need to stay in touch. We want to know what's new every time. But what is that causing? What is that causing in your life? Interruption, distraction, right? Unnecessary stress. I mean, you just go on a low information diet, as they say, and see the pleasures of it. I have not read a newspaper in ages. Does that make me how does that impact my life? How does that make any difference? Big deal if I don't know a few facts about certain things. The world moves on with or without me. Right? So do not have this we don't need to have this false sense of importance that things will stop functioning if we are not around for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. The world goes on and people will seek you anyways. Emergency has a way of reaching you with or without your help. Right? So if you switch off the phone for good 20 minutes, and believe me, if there is an urgent situation, it will still reach you somehow or the other. It's not dependent on that phone. It is not dependent on that cell. It is not dependent on that email. It will reach. The news will reach you. So eliminate the unnecessary, eliminate the waste, right? And try to focus on what is truly important, on that 20% which brings out the 80% results for you. And then do not give it all the time in the world. You have to set a deadline and not let the Parkinson's law apply on you. Right? So that really is the ultimate key, according to me. This I've talked about, so I'm not going to repeat the theme. Okay, here's a nice video which I wanted to share with you. You'll all have a good laugh.
Good, send her in.
Morning, Mr. President.
Oh, Condoleezza, nice to see you. What's happening?
Well, Mr. President, I have the report here about the new leader in China.
Wait, Condi, lay it on me.
Mr. President, Hu is the new leader in China.
Well, that's what I want to know.
Well, that's what I'm telling you, Mr. President.
Well, that's what I'm asking you, Condi. Who is the new leader of China?
Yes,
I mean the fellow's name.
Hu.
The guy in China.
Hu.
The new leader of China.
Hu.
The Chinaman.
Hu is leading China, Mr. President.
What are you asking me for?
I'm telling you, Hu is leading China.
Well, I'm asking you, Condi, who is leading China?
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes,
Will you or will you not tell me the name of the new leader of China?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Arafat is in China. I thought it was in the Middle East.
That's correct, sir.
Then who's in China?
Yes, sir.
Yasser's in China?
No, sir.
Then who is?
Yes, sir.
Yasser?
No, sir.
Connie, you're starting to piss me off now. It's not about your black neither. I need to know the name of the new leader of China, so I want you to get me the Secretary General of the United Nations on the phone.
Coffee, Anna?
No, thanks. And Connie, Colby George.
You want coffee?
No.
You don't want coffee?
No, but now you mention it, I could use a glass of milk. And then get me the UN.
Yes, sir.
Not Gasser, the guy at the United Nations.
Coffee.
Milk! Please make that call.
You call who?
Well, who's the guy at the UN?
No, who is the guy in China?
Will you stay out of China?
Yes, sir.
And stay out of the Middle East. Just get me the guy at the UN.
Coffee.
All right. Cream and 2 sugars. Now get on the phone.
Hello. Right here.
Right. Good idea. And get a couple of egg rolls for Connie. Maybe we can send some to the guy in China. And the Middle East. Can you get Chinese food in the Middle East? I don't know.
So the next key is listen. And to me, in my scheme of things and my belief system, to be a good communicator or to be a glib talker is not as important for the merchandisers as being good listeners is. Right? You can get away if you're not very good at speaking English. You know, Chinese people don't know how to speak very good English. And still they do much, much better than all of us at what they do. Right? So I don't really lay too much of premium on being very good speaker and all that, but I do give a lot of importance on being a good listener. And I think that's one skill which, let's be honest, put a hand on our heart, we're not very good at. Most of us are not very good at, really listening well. We hear, but we don't really listen, right? Because when somebody is talking to us, what happens to our brain? We're already thinking about what am I going to say next to you after you finish talking. Yes or no? Is everybody guilty here? All of us, including me, right? And that creates a distraction, and that's where the communication errors or gaps start happening, right? So this is another key which I wanted to speak about today. Active listening. What do you think is active listening? Attentive. When we are paying attention, when we are not getting distracted by a lot of things happening around our environment, when we are not preoccupied with our own thoughts to the extent that they come in the way of actually listening to what the other person is saying. Right? Empathetic listening. What is empathy? Tell me the meaning of the word.
Feel the same as somebody else. Feel exactly the same.
Yes. Anybody else?
Being in someone's shoes.
Absolutely. When you try to listen to somebody and understand it from their perspective, right? That is empathetic listening. You have put your ego aside for that moment and you are stepping yourself into that person's shoes and see the difference. The first thing that you will communicate to the person by doing this is telling that person, I respect you. Right? And see what that does. It does wonders to the relationship that you build with that person across you. When you tell people you respect them, what do you get back in return? Respect. So empathetic listening, according to me, is another. And what does that do? It creates an opportunity to cut down on a lot of errors that happen in our world. Right? Because you are listening at it from that person's perspective. I'd like to invite any two volunteers here, right here, any two people. Please cooperate, please help me out here. This will demonstrate a very important point. Any two persons, one more. Thank you so much. Thank you. I need one more person. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Come here, please. I'm going to ask the two of you to go on a vacation together. How's that? Yeah? Yeah. Right? The two of you have to go on a vacation together, and now you talk in front of everybody. You are deciding what you will do on this vacation, or where you're going to go, what you want to do. In this first chance, what you will need to do is that you will speak, and then every sentence, thank you so much. Thank you. Every sentence you start, you have to start by yes, but. That's a deal.
Okay,
That's an instruction I'm giving you. Right? Any statement that you make to him, you have to say yes, but. Okay?
first accept.
So,
And you also
no, whatever he says, you say yes, but, and then say what
Okay.
you want to say. Is that fair?
For me also same applies.
No, you are going to, yes, both of you.
Yes, but
Yes, but. Every sentence should begin with yes, but. Fair enough? Understood?
yes. Let's go to Osaka to attend the Giant Fair.
Yes,
But.
but it is not a good time to go. Economy is down.
Okay, but yet this comes after 3 years, you know. I think it's a good opportunity. Japan is known for innovations. Let's make it.
Yes, but you need to go well prepared.
We will do
Because
that.
language is a barrier.
Sorry.
Language is a barrier, and you will struggle otherwise.
Yes, but we'll try to understand, you know, through maybe phonetic or through interpreters. I think nothing will stop us. Yes,
Yes, but efforts will be required, and you will learn a lot of things. But for learning, we'll have to take some inconvenience also. That I am prepared.
but okay. But I think the answer lies in your question. You said that we need to learn it. If we have that thing in mind, you know, learning aptitude,
stop.
we'll make it. Yes.
Stop. So now I'm going to present another scenario in front of you, where I'm requesting these two gentlemen to plan that vacation again. And this time my request is that every sentence you start, instead of saying yes but in the beginning of the sentence, just say yes and. Try it. Same. You can. This time maybe you can go to Hawaii or wherever.
We'll go to Osaka only. We'll not change the destination. Let's go to Osaka, back to Giant.
Yes, we'll go.
And.
Yes, and we'll go after a month or so.
That
I'm
makes
busy just now.
that makes sense to me.
Yes.
Yes, I will surely go with you, and we need to be better prepared this time.
Yes. And how about booking the tickets early?
Brilliant. I love this.
Yes.
I love this. I think this demonstrates a very valid point. When we do yes but, what are we doing? We are negating the other person, stopping that person in the tracks there and then, right? We are telling the person that you are not worth it, that I don't give you credit for your brain, right? In plain and simple language, that's what we tell when we yes but. Whereas the same thing when we do yes and, what are we telling? I accept your point of view, I hear you, I understand you, and then we move much quicker, much farther, and we achieve a lot more. Does that make sense to everybody here? Absolutely. You are not yes butting, you are yes anding. You are accepting. I try this exercise in a lot of my sessions, right? And I find people are not able to construct a single simple story if I tell them that, okay, each person of you, it's a game which kids play when they are small, each person will contribute one word to the story. You don't know what the other person is going to say, but you have to, link it and form a story. I find people start struggling. And they're not able to form a single story, and I have to help them, coax them. Come on, okay. From one word, then I say, okay, use one sentence. Maybe then we can build a story. I allow, each person to say one sentence. Even then, because the blocks in our head, we are not able to create. Whereas my child, if I talk to her, she'll rattle off a story in 2 minutes. She'll go from, here to heaven to, fairies to wherever in no time. But there are no blocks. And most of the blocks are created by our own selves. Because we are in this mode of, yes, but, you have to listen to me. Listen to me. No, we've got to listen to the other party. We've got to understand things. And that goes, a lot of people spoke about customer satisfaction and understand. One is the external customer. Yes, you've got to understand from their perspective. But one is your internal customer. The person you're talking to on a day-to-day basis, he is your internal customer. How we treat them will then get the results for you. Right? Agree to disagree. Right? You don't have to have your way or the highway. Agree with me? Ya to meri suno varna main chala. Right? It doesn't have to be this way, and most reasonable people will agree or will tend to support a decision even if their point was not, is not the one which is being, adhered to in the end, as long as they know that their point was genuinely listened to. Right? That people paid heed to what they had to say, and then in the general interest, okay, something else was decided. Fair enough. But there is just this need that people have to be heard, genuinely heard. And that gives them the peace of mind that, okay, I'm respected, my point of view was heard. It's okay if something else prevailed in the end. Are you with me? Is everybody with me? Paraphrase, clarify. This is another very, very key thing. Right? When somebody says something to us, an active listener will try to put it, the same thing that person has said in his words. What I understand you said is, whatever. Right? And that gives the opportunity for the original communicator to interject and say, no, that's not what I wanted to say. I meant this. And right there, a communication barrier or a communication error has been prevented. So paraphrase, summarize, right? Acknowledge, look into that person's eye, show respect. And believe me, huge, 90% of the problems that happen in our industry are due to lack of communication in some form or the other. In some form or the other. You do deep thinking and you will agree with me more or less. Right? Now this is the next word jumble that was there, and I want to touch upon this. I'm entering a zone which I call a danger zone. Is anybody from Kerala here? Nobody? Okay, so has anybody heard of the snake boat races that happen in Kerala? Right? Have you seen them? Any video of it? How there are 40, 50 people sitting in that long boat, and each one of them is pedaling the, whatever you call it, what is it called? In a completely synchronized fashion. And there will be few people standing in between just clapping and motivating the peddlers. And there's only one objective, one collective objective. That is to win. Nobody else is thinking about anything else. That's one overriding objective. Believe you me, it's every CEO's dream to have that kind of a team. Every CEO would give you anything, left arm, right arm, whatever you wanted, if they could have this kind of a team in their organizations, an organization where every part of it is working in a synchronized way towards one collective objective. And yet, knowing it fully well, this is what eludes us in a big way. To me, competitive advantage today, in this age of technology and ubiquitous information, it will not come from being too smart or being knowing about marketing and about, finance, about strategy, about this, about that. It will come from having an organization which is so well aligned that it taps into the multiple intelligence of each and every individual that works for the organization. Those will be the companies which I call the healthy organizations, which I call healthy companies. There is no politics. There is no confusion. Everybody is working together, right? Collective goal overrides any individual ego, any individual, or departmental or any kind of thing. Doesn't come in the way. One overriding rule, you've got to win. Everybody walks in the same way. Everybody talks the same language. Why is it so difficult to achieve? Any ideas?
Generally self-centered.
Individual thought by tendency.
There is? What is the first foundation stone for building a good team?
We have to trust each other.
What is trust?
In the other person, having faith in us.
Having faith about what? That they'll do the job or what? What kind of faith are we talking about? She said it, right? The trust is nothing but the faith in another individual that this person's intentions are good, right? He will not harm me in any way. That is what is trust. It's not a predictability of your behavior that, okay, this person has been known to do the job, so if I give him this situation, he will act. That's based on your previous, behavior, or that's predictability. But I'm talking about trust, something much more deep-rooted, right? When you know that the person sitting in front of you is not going to harm you in any way, you trust him. And what does that do to you? It allows you to put your guard down. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? So that is the kind of trust we need to cultivate. When people are being genuine, right? And when we have that kind of trust, when everybody feels that, okay, we are a group of people and we trust each other, we don't mean any harm to each other. What that leads to then is the next building block, is that you are able to speak openly. You are able to have conflicts about issues in an unfiltered, unguarded fashion. Everybody speaks. They are not bothered about managing their behavior in the politically correct way, because whatever you say is not going to be taken against you, or it's not going to be used against you in any way. So what you do then is you speak openly, because the intentions of people around you are good. Yeah? So that allows for unfiltered, passionate debates about issues. Conflicts are healthy. Believe me, conflicts are good. Why conflicts are healthy?
They generate new ideas.
They generate new ideas. And why are they healthy?
It's like a democratic way.
Everybody's voice is heard. It taps into multiple intelligences. There are 5 people sitting in the room deliberating about an issue. If every voice is heard, believe me, you will be wiser compared to when only 2 voices are heard. Yes or no? Everybody with me?
Yes.
Right? So that is the kind of trust which needs to be built in the organizations. And then there has to be unfiltered, passionate debate about issues where everybody lives and breathes for that collective goal. Nothing comes in the way. Right? And when you are talking, even if you are speaking in a passionate way, you are not told to, you're not told, ठीक है, take your issues offline. तुम अपने झगड़े साइड में निपटा. No. Because then we are punishing a culture which says you are allowed to do open debate about issues and no harm will come to you. Right? The problem avoidance, it happens in husband and wife as well, right? Cold wars होते हैं कि नहीं? कई दिन तक बात नहीं करते. But does that solve the problem? No, it resurfaces again and again. Because it's there, festering inside you. Right? It will come at the opportune time. You will bring it out, you will put that other person down. ठीक है बच्चों, देख लूँगा opportunity मिलने पर, right? And when people's voices are not heard, you don't get a complete buy-in. मैं तो पहले ही बोल रहा था ये गलत है. मैं तो पहले ही कहा था ऐसे नहीं करना चाहिए, किसी ने सुनी नहीं मेरी बात. होता है ना? Then people stand and tell you, I told you. But when there is collective debate about issues, everybody is allowed to speak with no politics happening. There is no ambiguity in terms of what has to be done and who has to do what. Right? Then you are not scared of putting it on the notice board that this team meeting, this was decided, this person has to do this job, everybody has agreed upon, and you put it on a notice board and everybody is there to see. You're not scared of showing it because you all have agreed to it. Everybody has committed. Everybody's buy-in is there. Nobody is quietly harboring doubts in their mind to be told later on when things go bad. Right? So to get a complete commitment, again, it starts. These three things, why I'm building it one on top of each other is because it's linked. One leads to the other, and a lack of one leads to the lack of other. Accountability. What happens? What is a good team? In a football team, if you are playing together, and if one person is not doing his job well, you will catch hold of him, tell him, "Abhe, kya kar raha hai yaar? Kaise khel raha hai? You are not supposed to do that." What do? You are not scared of holding each other accountable for their jobs, for their performances, for the activities that they are supposed to do. And you do it openly because everybody knows the intentions are good. Everybody knows the aim is to do that goal. Right? So you're not going to mind. You're not scared of spoiling relationships here. You know, it happened with me once. I was in my society, we were trying to build a carpool. Right? 4 children going to the same school. Just because we were scared of spoiling the relationship, nobody came out in the open to set the rules of the game. And they were quietly harboring inside कि यार ये तो time पे pick up नहीं करती है, जब ये pick करती है 15 मिनट late होते हैं बच्चे ये टांट. There were a lot of things people had in their mind, but they would not say it openly because of lack of trust, lack of that. If I say something, relation खराब हो जाएगा, right? And the carpool, sure enough, didn't happen. Didn't happen because we were, you know, we didn't want. We'd rather have artificial harmony, so to speak, but not have unfiltered debates about the issues. So this artificial harmony is what exists in most of the companies, but when you peel the layer, there are a lot of grievances, undercurrents. I've seen it many times, so many companies I've done, and I do training workshops, and then the company owner will say, "Kuch to hua nahi, fayda to kuch nahi." So it doesn't happen in one training session. There are deep-rooted issues, right, which needs to be addressed internally as a group. What's going wrong where? What's the dynamics, right? And then, when you're not your attention is not on the collective goal, where is your attention focused then? Your individual growth, yourself. Apna department, mera career. Mujhe kya chahiye? What am I getting out of it? The collective is not important then, right? And that's when we get into silos and turf wars and, trying to be one-upmanship on each other. That's what comes in the way of the teams. So I want all of you to just think, reflect, and probably, it's not an easy thing to achieve. These are, as I said, entering the danger zone. These are not very easy conversations to have. These are very tough conversations. But then I welcome the idea that companies and people of, the organizations have to be willing to take and to make these tough conversations, to do these tough talks across the table, to come and address the issues on the board in an open manner, rather than putting them under the table and waiting for some magic to come and solve it. Right? Let's have these difficult conversations. Let's figure a way out to build solid teams. Right? So what is a good team in quick, if I had to summarize it, what am I looking for if we had to form a good team? It is a cohesive team, and the members of this team, what do? They trust each other, right? And then they engage in unfiltered conflict around ideas. And then they commit to the decisions and plans of actions. Everybody commits to it. And then they hold each other accountable. Peer pressure can be the best performance driver. More than any top management pushing you, if your peers put pressure on you, you will perform. Right? And then they hold one, and then they are focused on the achievement of the collective result. Team wins. Everybody wins if the team wins. There is no individual trying to hog the credit or trying to hog the power or whatever you are hungry for. Right? You're just hungry for one thing, that the team should win. And the last key that I want to talk about, again, I've been in a very gyan and reflective mode this 1 month. So I'm going to say that the last key is value. Right? In our scheme of this rush life, we tend to ignore our core and our deepest set of values. What in our Indian set of in Indian scheme of things is called the sanskar, right? Like every household has a set of sanskars. Likewise, every organization has to have a set of sanskars, right? Which are the guiding principles, which are your values, which define what you are as a person. We have to stay in touch with our deepest held values, because the lasting happiness comes only when we are aligned with our value system. Right? When you point this one finger out, what is happening is that there are 3 which are pointing inwards. And even everybody knows you've got to be honest to yourself. If we are being absolutely honest to ourselves, we will know somewhere that little bit of tiny finger was my fault also. And what do then? We start covering up. No, but if we live by our values, we'll say, fine, I made a mistake. I accept it, I admit it. And that just opens the way, right? You don't learn to be better unless you've made a mistake. Mistakes are nothing but a way of learning to be better. Agreed? So to stay in touch with the values is, I think, very important. It gives peace of mind. It gives lasting happiness. I was reading an article by Clayton M. Christensen. He is a professor at Harvard Business School. And he said that his class of 2010, they were looking forward for very plum-paying jobs. Obviously, if you're a Harvard graduate, you can expect the kind of jobs. And suddenly, 2010, because of the economic downturn, they were wondering. Suddenly, the jobs were not all that high-paying after all, and there were not too many takers. So the professor was asked that what is the advice you would give to this class, on the personal front, so he said 3 things. I want you to answer 3 important questions. And he said, question 1, that how can I be sure that I'll be happy in my career? 1. Secondly, he said that how will I ensure that my relationship with my spouse and family become an enduring source of happiness? And 3, how I'll ensure that I'll stay out of jail. The third one seems funny, but you see, the Rajat Guptas or the McKinsey heads, they're successful, but where did they end up? Right? That's where value comes in. So what he says is that, I'm going to be quoting him here. So what will ensure that you get happiness in your career? There are three things, right? One is, or actually four. One is that you are getting enough opportunities to learn, right? And then you're growing in your responsibilities, right? You are a merchant, then you become a senior merchant, you have more responsibility. So you're growing in your responsibilities. Third thing that gives us motivation is that we are contributing to others. And we're making a difference. We contributed in a positive way, right? And the fourth thing is you want to be recognized for the contribution you made. Fair enough? Makes sense? Right? So think about along these lines. Right? And then he says that what happens is typically smart, achievement-oriented people, they tend to focus on the tangible measures of success. What are the tangible measures of success? You shipped an order on time, that's tangible. You achieved a promotion, that's tangible. You got a salary hike, that's tangible, right? And what remains intangible is what is the relationship you build with your kid. It doesn't give us immediate payoff, right? Your kids misbehave every day, and it's not until 20 years that you can say, I raised a good kid. The return on investment is not a quick one, right? Or even with your spouse. If you don't pay attention to your relationship with your spouse, the deterioration will not appear very quickly. It'll still seem things are very good, very normal, right? So it's not tangible. So what he is saying is that try not to just focus on only the tangible, but also the intangible, which is much more long-lasting in terms of giving you happiness and peace of mind. Ultimately, why do we go to work? Why do we do anything? What is the sole source? What is the sole aim? We want to be happy, right? And then about the third thing, how do I make sure that I stay out of jail? He says you have to resist the temptation of giving in to just this once. What is the quotation he uses? Repeat after me, just this once. So he gives an example that he was a football player, and he was supposed to play a football match or some league, whatever, some important match, and it was a Sunday, and this guy is a very religious man. So for going to the church on a Sunday is very important to him. So he was faced with this dilemma that what should I do? And he said, no, I will not play the game this Sunday. And people were incredulous. They looked at his face like, what are you talking? You will not play such an important, match just because you got to go to the church. Come on, just this once you can do an exception, right? And he says that my ability to resist that temptation to give in just this once that day to the extenuating circumstance that was standing in my face is what has stood me in good grounds till date, because after that my life was a series of such extenuating circumstances every now and then. So if I had said, and he says that it is easier to maintain just this once 100% of the time rather than 98% of the time. Because once you have said, okay, just this once, there will be hundreds of opportunities. So basically what I'm trying to say, the point that I'm driving home here is that define your values. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'll close it quickly. Define your values and put them in a safe line, safe space. Draw a line in a safe space where you will not cross that line. That's it. With that, I want to thank you all for listening to me, and I appreciate, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.